Okay, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm Peter Kennedy. I lead Capco's technology work in the UK. And first of all, thank you all for taking the time to join this webinar today, and welcome to Capco. So our webinar today is in a series of capital markets discussions that we've been doing, and this one is focused on the world of prime brokerage technology. Now, Prime encapsulates lots of product areas and service offerings, but one common theme has always been efficiency, robustness, and connectivity in technology. So we've seen trends in data availability, cloud-based as-a-service technologies, managing technology, legacy technology stacks, APIs, and cost pressures, and those all drive some tough decisions and opportunities as primes. And as prime brokerage technology vendors look to take advantage of those changes. So today our discussion will focus on where a prime broker's investment should be. So there are some classic questions which will come up. So build versus buy, greenfield versus legacy, do you do cloud versus on-prem, how do you leverage distributed workforces? There are some trends across established players, and then there are new entrants. Plus, of course, there's a reliance on systems that support uptime during high volumes, as we've seen in recent periods of extraordinary volatility, whether that's driven by COVID or indeed elections. Now, so first of all, what I'd like to do is introduce our panel. This is our panel here that you can see on the slide. First of all, Steve Ehrenberg. Steve is the technology head for Prime Services, Collateral Management and Funding at Scotia. Steve is based in New York and has overseen the development of Scotia's technology stack for a number of years as they push for more market share and grow their prime brokerage offering. Welcome, Steve, and thank you. Secondly, Mike Roberts. Mike is the EMEA head of prime brokerage platform at Bank of America. Mike is the MD in Europe responsible for the development of the Bank of America Prime and Clearing. Mike came through the ranks of technology and Prime and is here to offer his insights into the hedge fund client drivers that have helped propel Bank of America into the top 5 primes. Welcome, Mike. Then we have Steve Mahoney. Steve is the Senior Vice President in Post-Trade Derivatives and Capital Markets at FIS. And joining in is John O'Mahen, Head of Product Strategy in Post-Trade Technology, also at FIS. So John and Steve are here to represent the view of the market-dominating FIS and SunGard, and we'll cover the viewpoint of long-established vendors. We're particularly interested in hearing their views on GMI and prime clearing. And then finally, I'd like to welcome James Cunningham. James is a General Counsel of Nuvo Prime. In fact, he's General Counsel and has a number of other responsibilities at Nuvo Prime. Nuvo Prime have built a cloud-based prime brokerage and swap platform, and in recent years have made great inroads into the marketplace with their innovative as-a-service product. Welcome, James. So welcome to our panel. Thank you for joining us. So finally, I'm now going to hand over to our panel moderator for today, who is Andrew Dearman. Andrew is an executive director in our New York practice at Capco. He has a rich history in prime and technology. I've had the pleasure of working with him for about 10 years so far. Then we're going to have some, he's going to take us through some questions. So I'll now hand over to Andrew.
Thank you, Peter. So a wise colleague once told me that selling a prime services offering is heavily dependent on the technology platform that supports it. This is why the largest primes have historically invested heavily in IT, whether it's building their own platforms, buying vendor platforms such as GMI, or a mix of the two. Which leads me into my first question. What is your organization's prime IT strategy? Is it build or is it buy? And firstly, I'd like to direct that to Steve Ehrenberg at Scotiabank.
Hi, thanks everyone, and good morning. Thank you very much for having me, first of all. At Scotia, we have a hybrid approach in our prime technology strategy. We do use a vendor suite of transaction processing systems for transaction processing and reporting. And we also leverage different vendor solutions for risk and margin processing and online analytical processing. These systems have been integrated over the years through a proprietary data layer and operational data store built in-house by my teams. This data layer allows us to control the interfaces with Scotia's enterprise operations, finance, and risk systems. It allows us to easily create custom client reporting where the vendor systems don't offer the needed functionality out of the box. It also allows us to add new channels for client trade and allocation processing where the vendor systems don't offer the needed connectivity out of the box. And finally, and maybe most importantly, it lets us centralize and translate our transactional data across the asset classes and prime services into a form that our analytic systems can consume and process cleanly. In the last few years, we have also extended this data layer to perform key transaction processing functions. This is especially true for areas that we think represent an opportunity for Scotia's competitive advantage. We think this hybrid approach is great, which we'll talk about as part of the next question.
Thank you, Steve. I'd like to put the same question to Mike at B of A. What is your strategy? Is it build or is it buy?
Yeah, look, firstly, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. Looking forward to hearing of the views from the rest of the panel. It's a similar strategy, to be honest with you. I mean, we come from a different sort of place. So, our prime strategy is built from the fact that we are an established prime broker, but we actually have quite a unique business mix at Bank of America. So alongside a top tier prime business, we are kind of fortunate enough to have a market leading clearing business. So that business in particular, it services, market making firms, the big electronic market making firms and the dealer community. So with that in mind, similar, we've taken a design approach that covers those client segments to flex around technology and digital innovation. So I would describe it's a thoughtful blend of, core assets where we think we have an edge and we want to press on that edge and build that moat. Coupled with buy, where we feel the market has built around a consensus on aggregation products. And we see those, come in and out of fashion, which is one of the reasons why sometimes we prefer to buy in that space because, aggregation products can sometimes come and go depending on regulation and client demand. And then the other side to it is, we don't want to be in the business of building bespoke capabilities. They may not fit our overall tech strategy. And they may just feel a bit too bespoke and specialized for the platform. So again, a blended mix and a blended approach.
Okay, thank you. And Steve, back to you again. What would you see the benefits of buying versus the pitfalls of buying?
So the key benefit of vendor systems is leveraging vendor functionality built for other clients. This leveraging is especially useful now for street-wide system requirements, especially those stemming from industry-wide regulations and operational flow changes. A great example from recent years has been SFTR, which is the Securities Lending and Repo European Transaction Reporting Regulation, where a few key vendors have stepped up and really facilitated industry coordination and compliance with SFTR. Additionally, the nature of prime services as a business makes it ripe for reuse opportunities. As an example, in transaction processing, because prime is very intrinsically tied in with operations technology, the widespread use of standard vendor systems in operations technology, such as the Brokerage suite of systems, it really increases the value of standard interfaces that are provided by many of the prime services technology vendors. Another factor is that prime services transaction processing requirements are often less sensitive than the transactional asset classes like cash equities to transactional volume processing capabilities and latency. The type of IT investment that goes into proprietary transaction processing systems in those other asset classes to shave seconds or even milliseconds off of individual transactions often cannot be justified in prime services. Another great example of where benefits exist with vendors is data and analytics. One of the key requirements and challenges of prime services technology is to present clients with a unified reporting picture across different transactional flows. This is very hard to get right. It needs to be flawless to keep customers happy, and it's expensive to implement right. Having a single vendor provide a solution for the multiple operational flows can provide great results and is a great place to reuse solutions that already cover even a portion of this challenge and get it right. In terms of pitfalls, any outsourcing of functionality to a third party comes with third-party risk and information security concerns. In recent years, this has become a major source of regulatory scrutiny on prime services businesses and capital markets businesses in general. Much of this risk management responsibility falls on prime services technology teams, and my team exerts an increasing amount of effort in this space. Additionally, paying vendors to implement customized requirements can lead to a loss of intellectual property and competitive advantage. The inverse of reuse is that any custom builds by the vendor release intellectual property to competitors. Finally, customized vendor builds can also lead to reduced agility compared with in-house builds. Outsourcing requires a level of formality in creating requirements and means getting the requirements right up front. An internal build can react more quickly to scope or requirement changes. This leads me back to the hybrid approach. I'm a big fan of this approach that we have taken to Scotia, as it gives us the flexibility to leverage the benefits from that the vendors offer at a reasonable cost of ownership, while allowing us to minimize the loss of intellectual property or competitive advantage. It also allows us to have more agility and flexibility where we foresee volatility in scope or requirements.
Thanks, Steve. Just as a follow-up question on that one, I mean, there's lots of discussion in the vendor community about bank in a box. Have you seen any sort of push for prime in a box, or is that something that you think the industry is moving to?
I don't know that I've seen it at Scotia, but so I really can't comment on that.
Okay. Mike, to you, what would you see the benefits and pitfalls of, again, same question, on the build side?
Yeah, look, on the build side, I would say, it couples with what I said to begin with. We've chosen the assets carefully that we want to build. Certainly where we've got an edge, or it was some of the foundation stones of of our business. We've got a long historic business, so there's products and services that we've built in there, optimization engines, netting engines, etc., where we genuinely feel we have an edge and we want to maintain that technology. What it's also allowed us to do is, as tech changes and there's innovation in the space, we can actually take some of our core platforms, remove some of the legacy calculation methodologies, etc. in them, kind of dumb them down a bit to do something that we would like them to do on scale, which is important to us at Bank of America because of the volumes we handle. And then we've moved towards an API as a service model, and then we have the calculators and the bespoke bits of prime brokerage around that ecosystem. But it allows us then to make changes to rehypothecation engines, billing engines, etc. separately. So if we didn't build and we didn't have control of our own destiny in that space, it's not so easy to flex around that type of strategy. So that's one of the main reasons we like that model. Additionally, we have a lot of regulatory scrutiny on some of the business that we cover. We have to maintain orderly markets in terms of clearing and the volumes that we handle, and we prefer to be in charge of our own destiny in that space. So that would be the final benefit, I would say there. The pitfalls, I kind of concur. It's the reverse of what I said. The risk is on our organization to deliver, but we choose to take that risk. It's an assessed and a measured risk we take. And you can't democratize the costs, or it's not easy to democratize the costs of building some of this infrastructure out. So, they, for me, would be the benefits and the pitfalls of build. If we're looking at buy, on the buy side, it's many of the things that were mentioned in the early discussion, but, we don't want to build non-core products on the platform. So, and sometimes, the fact that these products go in and out of favor, and technology can disrupt them, and something can, be the flavor of the month for 2 years, and you can spend a lot of money building it out, and then something else comes along and disrupts it. We take a measured approach towards that, and that's where we would say, look, we want to buy in that circumstance, or, we don't think it's appropriate to spend the funding we have for the prime business on building out very, very bespoke capabilities that we know that there's 3 or 4 firms that we've assessed, they're best in class, and we can go with them. What we don't like about that model, I would say, is we're beholden to a third party, and we can negotiate tight SLAs, and of course we do, but the last thing any prime wants is a client-facing issue that can't be resolved quickly. So, depending on the type of tech outage or the skills of the technologists they have at the third-party vendor at any given time, so then they may be good this quarter, and then they lose, one of their top techies the next quarter. We don't really like that. So we have to be very, very thoughtful about what we buy and how core it is to the platform, because if there's client-facing issues, it's in our name and they need to be resolved.
Thank you. Just a reminder for people listening, please feel free to submit questions over the Zoom chat. and we'll look to answer them if we can closer to the end. I'd like to sort of bring in our vendors. We've obviously got Nuvo and Nuvo Prime and FIS. This third question I'm going to put towards them. While you're somewhat biased to buy, do you see the advantage? What do you see the advantage your clients have from using your platforms and service that build only don't get? So I'm going to put that to FIS.
Okay. Steve and Mike hit on a lot of these, but this is always a question for clients and organizations when they come to us when they're trying to do different things. And I would say that the size of an organization or the size of the business people are trying to do, what type of complexity, the use of what they want to buy from an organization like us, the short-term and long-term returns, are all things that go into the decisions we know of our clients making these decisions, and Steve and Mike highlighted on some of them. But the things that people really get out of coming and buying something from an organization like FIS is you get predictability of costs. You generally will know what they are for some period of time, which is helpful. You get maintenance efficiency, that when maintenance needs to be done, whether it's plant and equipment, whether it's market changes, that maintenance should be efficient because everybody needs it. So essentially using the economies of scale that Mike or Steve highlighted earlier, that the things will get done. You will always with a vendor generally, you'll always get a wider set of features than you actually need. Most people don't need everything that they buy, but the platforms are built for multiple different types of organizations. So there may be additional markets, additional services that you can get just by buying the software, even if you don't use it. So if it's something you're going to do in the future, it'll already be there and built for you, so that it may not be something you build up front, which could be a cost later to you later on. And lastly, I'd probably say is that there is typically a larger pool of technology resources available to support the different types of products that people buy, because numerous organizations have them. Numerous organizations have IT teams that may be supported on site. Maybe there's technologists at FIS that support those systems themselves. So those are the things that people get. John, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I mean, I think that pretty much sums it up. I mean, I think if you look out there in the market today, I mean, it's I think most firms have adopted some sort of kind of hybrid approach, right? I think there's some outliers on either end of that, some that have, stubbornly resisted and built everything, and some that have completely gone to vendors. But I think most firms you do find taking some kind of hybrid model where it's a mix of things they've built and things they're getting from a vendor. It's interesting to see if the balance of that is changing at all due to the recent market changes and to COVID. I read a report, I won't mention by who because I think it's a Capco competitor, but the report was talking about in-house development and how a lot of the benefits or of that development were from having a group of people working in close proximity with one another to be innovative and create something very quickly, and that with the shift to remote working, that some of that may have been lost, possibly reducing the value of in-house builds. I don't know if that's true or not. That was just something they discovered in one of their surveys, but I think it's the question is always going to be out there of whether you build something and whether you buy it, and I think also a lot of the choices I've seen out there sort of reflect how that firm views themselves, right? How they view their differentiators in the market. There's some firms that really believe it's all about the operational expertise they bring. There's other firms that think, well, it's about my client facing technology, and so you will see a different balance of hybrid depending on, how they're constructing their value proposition. Either way, I think it's hard to be at the edges of that continuum. I think it's somewhere in the middle is definitely where you need to end up. But I think that does change, the typical, technologist's scope of duties, from where we are now, from where we were, 15 years ago. 15 years ago was a lot more build yourself and integrate it all yourself. And now you have this hybrid environment, which adds new challenges. You have vendor management, you have risk management, many of the things that Steve and Mike already mentioned. So I think the role of the IT executive has really changed significantly in the past 10 to 15 years as a result of that shift to hybrid.
Thank you. I'd like to put the same question to James at Nuvo Prime. Would you answer as well from your organization's point of view?
Yeah, I guess I'd say that positing the question in terms of buy versus build doesn't really fit with Nuvo Prime's business model. We don't sell software that the customer then adopts and modifies. And I think that's quite I think that the buy versus build dichotomy is quite an old way of looking at it. So if you start at the bottom with the stack, and we run our application, the platform on AWS. I mean, AWS has an immense presence around the world. It has over 10,500 specialists in security. It has a huge footprint. It has high resiliency. And as an organization, we don't see why a bank would want to run that kind of a stack and deal with the redundancy, the patching, the upgrades that come with running all of those resources that sit in cloud. So first of all, we rely on AWS. We're sitting on their competency, and I think financial services organizations, and obviously I've worked for some directly in both a business role and a control role. They're always to the point that was just made, I think, by Steve. They've been sort of reinventing the wheel over the last 15 years when, it may have made sense to do so because technology could have been a differentiator. And so I don't want to sound like the man with a hammer who's in search of a nail. I think you have to be thoughtful about whether you're going to use third-party technology or build yourself. But, a lot of these products, particularly in the prime finance space, are pretty much standard across the organization. We're on our 5th client. And yes, we see variability from client to client, but it's not enough to justify putting the 30 or 40 man years that we've probably got now on the product. We've doubled every year as a company in revenue and in people. We've got a man year of development going into the product every month now, such as the size of our development team. But we don't see it as buy versus build because we offer a whole set of services. So one of the points that was made by, I think it was Steve Ehrenberg, was your agility as an organization and how you can manage the technology, and that may make sense for his organization to manage that in-house. But we manage the whole process. So we have business analysts, program managers, developers, so people that are building the code, and then we manage the stack of resources in cloud. And on top of that, we provide support around the world. So we're an essential outsourced provider rather than a software provider, if that makes sense. The software is the tool that supports the technical infrastructure that we run for large banks. And that means that they can focus on selling the product, delivering the financial service. We focus on processing. We focus on supporting, we focus on configuring and adapting the product to their needs. And so we have this one single code base that has all of the functionality that those 5 banks have collectively requested, and they get that as free. So it's kind of an Apple model in terms of the ecosystem of functionality, automation, and work tools that the Nuvo platform provides. So why would you do that 5 times? The answer is you wouldn't. So we have 5 banks that are relying on that common code base to support their business. So that's how we look at it. I would also add that, after, I think it was Hurricane Sandy in the United States, where I think I was at Bank of America at the time, services went out in near a DR location, which was in Jersey City, because such was the scale of the hurricane. And now, the recommendation, the best practice is to have DR locations that are both near and far. And you can do that in cloud by clicking on a radio button and sending the data to Singapore. So we're able to offer a hot backup solution to the client that they don't have to manage. In fact, we only have to manage it from the point of view of, again, the highest level of the value chain, which is the business logic. AWS spins up the stack. And when you saw last week, and I think it's quite topical that the webinar is today, and I won't name the brokers because one of them is amongst the panelists, but 5 major brokers in the United States went out because they didn't have sufficient load balancing, and there was a huge move on the back of the Pfizer news for the COVID vaccine. You don't get those problems in cloud, particularly when, as with NuvaPrime, the code base is native to cloud, so it scales automatically, leaving no limit to the volume of network connections that we need, the amount of compute power that we need to deploy, or the storage that we need to have in place. So it works for swap because, as I say, it's quite a commoditized product. There are some variations across the customer base, but they're modest. It may not work where, I think one of the panelists mentioned, a low latency product or some exotic product where the bank considers itself to have an edge, but it certainly works in the core prime finance space, and that's what we're in this to dominate.
So, Peter, just to wrap up these questions around, build versus buy, and also, this as a service. You've been working in technology for many years now. What's your view on what you've heard from the panel, and from based on your recent experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting debate, isn't it? I mean, I agree. I agree with James. I guess the whole buy versus build question is clearly changed. Is quite rapidly changing, right? So on one hand, as you say, I've worked on lots of vendor package implementations, and that's a world which is changing quite quickly. It's all becoming much more agile as these products are starting to move towards becoming, or have become in some cases, as a service offerings which you access over the cloud rather than software which you bring on-prem and customize and then create an ongoing maintenance headache for yourself. So, and I think so the whole world, I guess our colleagues from FIS on the call here are experiencing, is changing quite quickly. And I guess from vendors' point of view, that's good because it means that their products and services are easier to get, and it's also potentially difficult because actually it's also easier to change. I think we are moving towards a world, I think, where hooking up to vendor services is getting easier, and therefore it's easier to chop and change between them. So I kind of envisage this in 5 to 10 years' time as an ecosystem of all sorts of different largely cloud-based services. I mean, at the same time, and James alluded to this as well, at the same time, actually building stuff has got dramatically easier in the last few years, partly due to cloud, partly due to technologies like containerization, but also partly due to, we're just getting better at building software for all sorts of different reasons. Now, I don't want to sound too glib about that. Building software is still something that catches even quite high-powered companies out. But it's easier to get stuff into production far easier now than it was even 4 or 5 years ago. So I think the whole economics of that question are changing, and I think it will lead to a more dynamic environment.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, which I'd like to put to Mike at Bank of America. You're a well-established prime broker with many years in the industry. What's top of the agenda for your prime IT build-out? Is it new products, new offerings, multi-class asset service, improved ability to deal with volatility or regulatory trends? Where is your spend going to be going in the near future?
Yeah, look, I guess the easy answer is a bit of everything. And, you know, we say that for a reason. Look, for us, Prime is a platform business. You know, it's a marketplace, it's an ecosystem. And as we've kind of got used to being with Bank of America, obviously, you know, as a reminder, there was the merger between, or not the merger, the takeover or the rescue of Merrill Lynch by Bank of America. We've now, you know, established ourselves within the firm, and now we look across business lines and we see the platform capabilities and digital assets that the bank has outside of Prime. And the new kind of bastion for us is pulling that ecosystem into Prime to create a bigger marketplace, to cross-sell the products that we have outside of, you know, traditional markets business. You know, we have products such as Erica in the States that is used for retail banking. We have internal uses for that in Prime, and at a later date that could be rolled out for different uses on a wider basis. Now, you know, that is expensive technology that is proven on a retail customer base that we can now avail ourselves of. Cash Pro, you know, we have a market leading business in GTS that is around cash management services for corporates, etc. Now, why would we build our own cash payment systems when we have market leading products on, you know, elsewhere in the bank? So, you know, look, this is for us, the next bastion of prime brokerage at Bank of America. And how are we getting this done? Look, the bank has a key pillar called operational excellence. You'll obviously often hear the CEO talk about it in investor days, etc. We've just gone through a long cycle of analyzing our business, looking at the opportunities, you know, assessing where this business wants to be in 5 or 10 years time. And we're pretty happy to kind of have been chosen for secured, you know, extended funding over multiple years to connect to the wider bank and deliver on some of our aspirations in the prime space. So, you know, that for us is, you know, one of the things we're concentrating on and we're very excited about, because we feel we're going to, you know, build a bigger marketplace and offer a bigger breadth of products. I mean, of course, there's the relentless reg change. I'm not going to go into that too much. I think everyone's a bit kind of overcooked with reg. We get it done. You know, I think we are in a situation now where we know how to execute on reg change, no matter how complicated it is. You know, SFTR, very far reaching, it's live, it works. We're happy with it, but, you know, it's one of these things we have to deliver and make sure we land it in a really good way. But, you know, it's not really adding to, you know, the product suite that I think clients really want to see. Optimizing the platform for volumes. You know, I talked about this earlier, the unique footprint of our platform. You know, in March and April, we saw exponential volume growth, you know, record volumes in all regions, all markets, you know, with the biggest options market maker in the States by a massive order of magnitude. We're the #1 clearer in Europe. So when we're clearing, you know, 25, 30% of all equity trades in the region, and then you have volume spikes like we had in March, the first thing is, can we handle it? Did we deliver for our clients? Yes. The next thing we need to do after that is take our platforms to a step change higher in terms of the volumes they can handle. The regulators expect it, our clients expect it. And that's what we've been concentrating on since March and April, to make sure, you know, that extra capacity, the extra optimization, you know, the edge we feel we have in the marketplace was optimized and, you know, at a new high watermark for volatility. Certainly the past few weeks, the announcement of the, you know, potential vaccine, welcome news for everyone, and the presidential election, we saw massive volume spikes. And the platform handled it, no problems at all. Last thing for us is APIs as a service. So, you know, we spend a lot of time architecting the platform around, you know, the sort of blended business model or the hybrid business model, where we can have APIs as a service internally, connecting to all the core, you know, internal platforms, allowing them to seamlessly distribute information back and forth to the prime brokerage platform, allowing also the internal change where these platforms can change and our clients don't really realize it's happening. And then, you know, the great success we like with these APIs as a service is once they're robust and we're comfortable with them, we expose them to the customer base. So we're moving away from PDFs, ideally CSVs as well. And you get clients connecting us to connecting with us direct as a, you know, through the API structure. And it's interesting, you get some benefits from that you might not have initially realized. So we released an API for MiFID II, title transfer, you know, just a key piece of information. Number of clients, one, particularly some of the sophisticated clients we deal with, they just want to talk computer to computer, tech to tech. You know, PDFs, CSVs are not what they're looking for. So we built that for that customer base, but we've now been able to pivot that piece of technology to connect to a money market provider, for liquidity solutions. So 2 users, 1 tech spend, quick time to market. We think that's going to get us in a situation where we can be very agile and nimble. And if we choose to take out a big piece of our technology because it's no longer core, we feel this is going to be a much easier way to plug in, some of the potential solutions we're discussing on this call.
Thank you, Mike. I'd like to direct the next question to Steve. You're expanding your Prime offering. The same question, what is your focus? But also, we've been talking about cloud, and we're going to be talking about cloud later on. So, what's going to be the focus of your IT spend, and also how important is cloud-enabled technology to you going forward?
Sure. So I'll start with a question about what we're focused on. So it's important to realize we're exiting a period of tremendous, at Scotia, of tremendous investment in Prime. From around 2012 to around 2018 was really establishing Prime Brokerage as a global business. And there's definitely a lot of focus on monetizing that now. So, meeting new client requirements in that space, especially around new reporting needs and facilitating trading in new security types, that's a constant. That sort of is really the definition of what Prime Services technology does. And we have a steady pipeline of demand around that. But I would say even more than that is something that the others have mentioned as well, which is as we look to take on more clients and new balances, we're really looking to increase our automation and our straight through processing in order to be able to scale up our business. This is another area of focus across asset classes and is being worked on in very close partnership with operations technology at Scotia. Examples of this include in the securities lending space, we've recently moved to a new locate management system that is much more modern, much more scalable, and really poises us to take advantage of types of clients that we couldn't have done previously because of the volumes of locates. Similarly, in the securities lending space, we're very focused right now on enhancing our auto lending capabilities through the ECNs like Equilend, a place where we have several advantages and can monetize that a lot by being able to scale up our automated trading there. Additionally, across Prime Services asset classes, corporate action processing improvements and client self-service of other operational activities are a major focus. This includes wires, it includes voluntary corporate actions, it includes many of the things that today require a lot of manual operational intervention to get done. In a similar vein, we're planning to move multiple system processes from their current file-based or start-of-day basis to a real-time and message-based set of interfaces. This is really important for our business to be able to maximize their revenue opportunities as well as control their costs, especially in areas like short coverage and managing borrow costs. Finally, streamlining of client onboarding processes is a big focus in order to reduce manual processes for my application support team and the multiple operation teams today that are involved in client onboarding. Similar to what Bank of America mentioned also, we are definitely looking to cross-sell and working closely with some of the cash trading teams in technology to look at many opportunities to cross-sell some commission-based products with places where we're already established as a prime in the customer base. Moving on to your next question, in terms of cloud technology, cloud has already mentioned, James mentioned this, it's a great tool for controlling IT expenses associated with hardware, which has long been amongst the biggest ongoing IT costs. It also provides great agility to software development teams during development by allowing them to self-provision hardware and software. Acquiring hardware is often the source of project delays with traditional physical hardware. This advantage is especially powerful when combined with containerized platforms like Docker and Kubernetes, which allow even faster deployment of base software. For this reason, we leverage cloud-based environments at Scotia for some of my systems, and I know that some of our vendors do as well for hosting our systems. There are, however, challenges to using the cloud and containerized technologies. The first one I would say is having client data in the cloud raises new and larger information security concerns about risk of data breaches, et cetera. Development and support teams can spend a lot of time managing this risk and the associated audit and control scrutiny that go along with it. The second consideration is applications need to be architected or re-architected if they are legacy systems in order to be deployed on cloud. in many circumstances. There can be a large upfront investment associated with this, and it makes cloud a better route, in my opinion, for greenfield system development, and that's how we've used it.
Okay, thank you. Discussing the cloud again, I'd like to, I know James, on behalf of Nuvo, has discussed the cloud quite a bit, but I'd like to put this question to FIS. How is FIS exploiting the use of the cloud?
Yeah, sure. I can take that one. So I would say FIS is taking advantage in a couple of different ways. One is that FIS has invested quite a bit of its own capital in building out additional new cloud capabilities. We actually built an FIS cloud, and that was a major investment decision by FIS. But we have also been partnering with some of the providers out there as well, Azure, AWS, because we know that some firms have committed to using those, and if they can do things in a cost-efficient way, then we see no problem working with partners to deliver that cloud. And the other, I guess, theme of cloud at FIS is that we are investing quite a bit in modernization of our platform. So we're building new platforms to replace our legacy platforms that take advantage of these cloud capabilities, some of which have been mentioned earlier in the discussion. But certainly we've already seen some great advantages from some of that investment. We have been rebuilding our futures platform, for example, and we saw that for some of our clients that were using it already during the COVID lockdown, volumes saw incredible results, right? It performed exactly as we expected it to. It was able to scale up very quickly and really handle those high volumes. So that kind of investment is really a central commitment of FIS, and the cloud technology is a basis for that, right? It's not the only technology. There's other things we're also building in that modernization effort. It's bringing in new data analytics, machine learning, robotics and automation. So it's an exciting time. But I would say that cloud is certainly foundational to that. And I think if you look in most places, cloud is not even a question anymore. It's just it's just the architecture you use to build, quite frankly. And it's certainly a major commitment of FIS to embrace and leverage that type of architecture.
Thank you. And staying with FIS again, you've long been entrenched in financial services. Most companies do have an FIS product, in their stack, and especially with the purchase of SunGard, GMI, you have the most well-known platform in the future space. What advantage do you see that using an established company as yourself benefits clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some obvious advantages. I mean, for one thing, FIS is such a trusted partner, right? It's we have a long history of delivering top-rate capital market solutions. We cover pretty much every area of capital markets, every asset class, every function. And I think that kind of scale that FIS brings to the market it has obvious advantages, right? We're able to really invest huge amounts of money in building out and delivering that technology and those services around the technology in a very cost-efficient manner. FIS also is, it's a massive company that has a very sound financial footing and a relatively diversified revenue stream, right? So FIS is not just capital markets products; it's banking products and it's payments, which is one of the fastest growing areas of the modern economy. So that's a big reason why many of our customers really trust us. And I think I would also mention that FIS invests a huge percentage of its revenue back into the business to help drive innovation, modernize those platforms, embrace cloud, and that kind of commitment to innovation and investment back into the products is, I think, unique out there in the industry. Finally, I would say the third kind of big advantage you get from FIS is that it has a really proven track record in taking just pure technology and building services on top of that technology. FIS years ago in the banking space was just providing some code and letting letting the bank run it. It's evolved over time so that it's not just delivering technology, it was delivering services around the technology, running it for you, to the point now where you can actually, FIS delivers a huge part of its value through services, right? Actually using the software to do something, obviously managed through SLAs with the clients, but that kind of layering of services on top of IP is something that FIS has an incredible track record at, and has been able to really do in multiple areas of capital markets. So a continued investment in making that bringing our client base exactly what they need, right? Which is to simplify the structure, simplify what's delivered, standardize what's delivered, deliver that quickly and cost efficiently. And I think you do gain that only through having that kind of size and scale.
Thank you. The inverse question to Nuvo Prime and James. You're a challenger and have built your product from scratch. What advantages do you see that brings?
Well, I think I touched on some of those previously, which is, a single, modern, scalable, cloud-native code base. We achieve scale through the power that AWS, in our case, delivers. Mike alluded to, Bank of America being able to cope with peak volumes, which Bank of America can do. But in order to cope with peak volumes, you have to build for peak volumes. So the capital expense of maintaining that sort of computing power is something that some of the largest banks in the world can manage, but anyone else who's in the next tier down, it's an inordinate and unnecessary, as I've alluded to, expense. I guess the other thing is that John referred to trust, right? And I think this is an issue where which is really important. Nuvo Prime is a new company, but it's formed of people with a lot of experience. It was set up by Claire Young and Andrew Bain, who had built multiple systems for multiple banks, and they realized that they were effectively reinventing the wheel each time. So trust is important because you have to have a credible group of people with the kind of skills that I alluded to earlier, that range from business analysts to developers and so forth. But we achieve trust through partnership with our customers. We're regularly audited. We're working with a West Coast cybersecurity firm for SOC 1 Type 2 attestation. And we're transparent with our customers about our finances. We don't have any debt. We don't borrow. And through a combination of all of those features, we've been able to take up some pretty significant market share in an area that was previously dominated by legacy technology. And I think that's a testament not only to the achievement of the founders of Nuvo Prime, but also to the kind of power that cloud can deliver. Just an example quickly, because it's sometimes a little bit intangible, but the technology that we use for searching Nuvo Prime, where you could have 500,000 swaps, for example, and get a sub-second search of the entire book of business. That technology, which is a Lucene-based technology, powers eBay. And AWS allows you to take advantage of these managed services that you couldn't possibly build out yourselves. And equally, the managed services are allied to a group of trusted AWS partners that can deliver vulnerability scanning, threat management, incident management, all these things that in the banks that I've worked in, you have many systems. It's not practical. They're all coded in different languages with different teams supporting them. You can't scan the whole logbook for 15 different systems to look for a vulnerability. Cloud really does tighten it up in a way that a constellation of legacy systems can't possibly do. But again, I'm not saying I think everything has to be cloud. I think you do, and I think the banks that you've invited today have hit the nail on the head. You have to be thoughtful about it. You can't just go off and start moving everything to cloud, because you're just shifting one mess into a containerized mess, if you will. But I guess that would be my comments on, from our side.
Thank you. Back to FIS. You obviously have an insight into most of the prime brokers in the street. Have you seen a change in the market, in banks and the transformation strategies around prime brokerage? Have you seen them taking advantage of emerging technologies?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with that one. So I think yes, at a very high level. How that has actually manifested itself has been definitely varied between firms. I think firms are looking overall at the entire stack, the technology stack, where it is today, where it needs to get to, and trying to figure out how best to do that, right? Because in many cases, these are, this is committing to a future state vision and engaging in sort of a multi-year commitment to really refresh that, right? And it might be building a piece and throwing an in-house piece out. It might be embracing a vendor and taking more of your ecosystem from that vendor. I would say all of them have made sort of early tentative attempts at leveraging some of the really interesting new technology like machine learning. I mean, there's tons of data out there, and I think people are just getting their heads around how to mine that data and use it for the kind of pattern recognition that's going to deliver business value. I would say it's on the uptick. It's increasing in the last year, especially. I think there's a lot more focus on leveraging some of those new technologies, leveraging reg tech in places. But I would expect that trend to increase. I think overall as an industry, capital markets has maybe been a little slower to embrace some of the technology innovations as an industry, but I do think it's catching up very rapidly.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to take one of the questions that has come from the people listening, and I'd like to direct this to Mike. Mike, what technology advantages are essential for running a prime financing business today?
Number one, I would say a centralized and structured data strategy. The data sets that are not centralized, structured, and understood is going to be a significant disadvantage. So, this has been a trend that we've seen across, sort of tech platforms, the industry, and focusing on prime for, a good number of years. And I think we're getting to the stage where we've broken the back of that. So look, could you do that quicker and on scale if you're starting from scratch? Of course you could. We're a prime that have been around for many, many years. We've got high number of clients, great degree of complexity. So we have to go a bit slower. We have to think about it in the right way. But I would say, data strategy, absolutely key, and a data strategy that is, fit for the future. So that'd be number one. I agree with everything that's been said around, cloud and pointing your business to the right type of tool set for cost base and scale. Look, we benefit at Bank of America because, internally, this is a big bank, and they have a pseudo internal cloud. We can load balance across servers internally. There's a lot of capabilities here, and as pieces of tech become redundant, we can obviously, point to that technology and build, what we classify in some cases an internal cloud. But that's not to say we aren't thoughtful and thinking about external cloud solutions in and across the bank. What else could I say? I mean, look, I think it's nimble innovation, right? A lot of our clients are rating us by the second now. Our customer base, is varied. It's very, very varied. But we cluster around quant firms, high frequency firms. They're tech first firms. We have one customer that prints 8-10 million trades a day. Not one trader in the building. Okay, so we've grown up with them. Their technology is of the moment. It's very, very impressive. And they are, we hear about broker scorecards in prime brokerage. Their broker scorecard is electronic. It's second by second. And our new challenge is matching up to, what that technology is doing and making sure that we can, address issues as they come up. So, yeah, I mean, look, there's probably more that I've forgotten, but they're the things that jump off the page to me at the moment.
Thank you. And another one from the audience. What technology trends are occurring in outsourcing, and does the panel think more hosted tech solutions will come to the fore in prime brokerage? Steve Ehrenberg, would you mind answering that one?
Sure. I mean, I definitely think it's the way of the future. Several of the vendor panelists mentioned the advantages and in terms of cost containment that are associated with outsourcing and specifically externally hosted. In terms of the trends and the needs, I think something that James mentioned, it resonates a lot, which is increasingly vendor firms have to become not just good technology providers, but good audit and compliance partners. It's a huge part of any outsourcing arrangement today. And it should definitely be understood by the vendors that we as clients, CTOs and business leaders in Prime, rate them as much on their ability to comply with our internal audit and control and information security demands as we do on their technical offerings. We just have to. It's a matter of survival. We will literally pull all of our SMEs into an endless, cycle of working with them to get through information security audits and things like that if we don't. So I think we're going to see more of it. But I think the vendors have to continually up their game in terms of being able to meet the compliance things and be able to really on demand show that they have powerful information security protocols and that their control environment is in order.
Thank you. We're actually coming up to the end of the webinar, so I'd like to just ask each of the panelists for a sort of 1 minute wrap up of their thoughts. Any other thoughts? And I'd like to ask James from Nuvo, would you mind just giving us a minute of your thoughts based on what you've heard today?
Yeah, I guess that what I would say is that, I've been in prime brokerage on the line of business and controls my whole career, and I've seen it grow up out of what was initially a stock loan business and then a cash prime brokerage business, a swap business, and then increasingly focused as I think Mike Roberts mentioned on collateral optimization. And those businesses grew up on divergent platforms. It is absolutely ripe as a business to bring those things together so that the amount of inventory that has to be drawn from the street is as small as possible. Cash is used as efficiently as possible. And each of those, we envisage are going to be fused into a single product that runs in a single code base and that takes advantage of the kind of technologies that we've deployed. So I think this is an area where great big chunks can be taken out of bank technology stacks and put into cloud in a thoughtful and logical way to have maximum resiliency and availability and security.
Thank you. Mike, just your sort of 1 minute, 30 seconds or so, just wrap up on what your thoughts are today.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you've been around Prime for a number of years, and obviously I worked with James many years ago, so we built some of the technology that I talk about. I almost see this as maybe the third or fourth iteration of Prime for some of the established prime brokers. So you were connecting all your existing assets together to provide a service. Then it was around adding derivatives, stock loan, and optimization. Then the next bastion of Prime is I think a much wider marketplace. Connecting all the services that a universal bank can offer. Of course, I would say that at Bank of America, but we see it as a unique opportunity. So the best Prime would offer everything that FICC and equities can do in a nice wrapper automated service, and then we think it's now branching out into servicing that client front to back. From issuing their staff with credit cards, helping them with the FICO scores, maybe leasing the art for the hedge fund dealer, for the hedge fund principals, etc. So us, it's just increasing the marketplace for prime brokerage. That's where we're going.
Okay, and could just FIS, could you give a sort of 30-second wrap up of your thoughts after listening to this webinar?
Yeah, this is Steve Mahoney. Listen, I think that it's really good to hear, what's on people's mind, what's changing. I think I grew up in Prime. I worked 15 years at Credit Suisse in their Prime brokerage team. So I'm very familiar with both kind of the sell side and the vendor side now. And it's very interesting to see, Primes need to be able to move data quickly, be very nimble. There's more and more variables of how they run their business, which makes it very difficult. I think each of the, a couple, Mike, and I think you made the comment about the vendors needing to be as good as a risk manager as a technologist. I think that's one thing we didn't make a comment on earlier, that at FIS we've spent a lot of time creating a vendor management group to match off to our clients. So we do SOC reports for everything. We have security reports, a compliance department and a regulatory department that's looking at different things going on around the globe, so that essentially we can react to things as quick as people could ask us questions. And it was something that it is something that we had started working on about 3 years ago, when our former COO, during a study that was done with a number of CTOs around the globe, it was said that people would start to choose a smaller amount of partners or vendors to do work for them, but the expectation of the tech, that there would be much greater expectation of services from them, more than just technology. Meaning that risk and vendor management and being able to answer questions for them around data security and stuff would be high on their agendas.
Okay, thank you. We are now out of time. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for spending the time and answering so many questions. Peter, I'll hand over you to wrap up.
Yeah, so thank you, Andrew. Thanks for hosting that. That was very thought-provoking. Thanks to our panelists. Thank you to all of our audience for dialing in from your home offices and kitchen tables and garden sheds. The team at Capco will be following up with you all and sending you a summary of today's webinar, and you'll be able to see a replay online shortly. And we look forward to welcoming you to another of our sessions. There's another one coming up on post-trade next week. If you do have any questions about this today, get in touch with me or Andrew or Anthony Bennett, who leads our prime brokerage in the UK, and we'll be happy to help. So thank you very much, and see you soon.